I finally sat down and watched the HBO documentary on the Murdaugh case, Low Country, and it really shed a lot of new light on how the family has operated for generations, really, and also the Stephen Smith case. In today's video, I want to talk about the most interesting parts in those videos, and let's go ahead and dive on in. Hello Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa. That's the sofa back there. Mr. Roscoe's starting to feel a little bit better back there, so he's holding it down over there, and Mr. Oliver is visiting again, and I'm going to be holding him for at least the intro, because as you can tell, it's playtime and he doesn't do well on his own. As you saw from the thumbnail, we're going to be discussing the HBO documentary on this case. Now, this is another one that I watched on my phone, and I've recorded some clips to use as talking points. What I've done is just captured the most interesting points to me, and I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are down in the comment sections if you, number one, have seen it, what the most interesting parts were to you, as well as what you think about the parts we're going to talk about here. But before that, we need to give a warm sofa welcome to the partnership that I have for today that made this video possible, in addition to the Sofa Squad making it possible. Now, y'all, this one is like a little story in and of itself. It's something I've been wanting to do for a really long time. So give a sofa welcome, a warm sofa welcome to MyHeritage. So I partnered up with MyHeritage. I've always wanted to do one of these. It's been on my bucket list, to be quite honest. And so I was super excited when I got to partner up with them. MyHeritage is a leading global family history and DNA service. And I'm super excited to tell you about my journey with this, my story, and my results. So these are the boxes that you'll get in the mail. And then it comes with your two little swabs and your two little things here. Then you just take the swabs and you do them in your cheeks for like 30 to 60 seconds. Another thing I appreciate about MyHeritage is that they're committed to their privacy policy to never sell or license genetic data. And in addition to DNA testing, MyHeritage offers a platform that makes it easy to build your family tree and research your family history. And then you take your little vial here, you put the swab in there, it has an easy to read little line there, and then you just break it off, seal it up, and then you just do the other one. You use one swab per cheek. So you put your finished swabs in here, you put them in the envelope that comes with it, you send those off to the lab, and now you can expect those in like 3 to 4 weeks, but there's stuff you can be doing in the meantime, and I'm gonna show you about it now because I had a blast prepping for my results. One of the things that you can do with MyHeritage while you're waiting for your results to come in is you can start building your profile. And I absolutely love that about my experience with them. So you can upload your photos on here, old family photos, that type thing. So first of all, I uploaded one of my grandparents, and this one has a scratch through it. As you can see, this was like a genuinely old photograph, so you can repair it. Now watch what it does on here. This absolutely amazed me. It is like a somewhat brand new picture, but you see the difference. I mean, that's amazing. Now this next thing right here where you can animate the photos, y'all, this is what I am talking about when I say I went on an absolute rabbit hole. You just put it in there, you pick the face you want to do. I mean, look at that, y'all. It's like they come back to life. This was my mother's father, so my grandfather. You can also restore color to photos. This was also another amazing feature that okay, y'all, so I got the email saying that the results are in, and so I was so stoked about this. I've got Roscoe, and we're gonna open them. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the screen up here so you can watch me open them and see what it says. Okay, are we ready to explore the ethnicity? Yes, we are. Let's go. Okay, here we go. Paul, you are. Okay. Oh my God, that's so cool. 55.9% Irish, Scottish, and Welsh. Okay, oh my God. Okay, so I could see that one with some of my family names. 29.3% English. That is crazy. I've always wanted to be that. That's so cool. 9.4 Eastern European. I did not expect that one at all. Okay, let's see. 4.3 North African. That is so amazing. That one I absolutely didn't expect. And where does it say that is? Hold on. Well, we'll look in a second. 1.1 Nigerian. Oh my God, that is so cool. Okay, is that it? Okay, that's it. So let's look at this little map here. Okay, I'm gonna have to really go in there. Look at that. That is so amazing. I absolutely did not expect really the last 4, but especially the last 3. Okay, so now the first one, the 55.9% one, I can like look at family names and stuff like that, and I've always kind of been like, okay, I think that that's my, you know, whatever. So that one doesn't surprise me. The fact that it's so prevalent does. And then the 29.3% English, yeah, that one I'm a little bit like, wow, okay. But when you get into the Eastern Europe, the North Africa, the Nigerian, like, yeah, was not expecting that. That is so cool. I really enjoyed partnering with MyHeritage. I thought it was easy to use. There's features on the website that I had no idea were even possible, like the ones that I showed you about the pictures, stuff like that. And most of all, the DNA thing was mind-blowing to me. It was amazing also to me to go through and start researching like the matches and the relatives. And that was what was really cool to me, was like the possibility of meeting relatives you didn't even know you had. So I definitely had a blast doing this. I think you will too. Be sure to check out the description box below, because this is how they're hooking the Sofa Squad up. If you click the description link below and go down there, you can use my code Sofa Squad to get free shipping. As an added bonus, you can start a 30-day free trial for MyHeritage's best subscription for family history research, and enjoy a 50% discount if you continue it. Alright, so be sure to check all their stuff out. It's down in the description below. Now let's look at that first clip.
Hampton is pretty much historically dominated by one family, the Murdaughs.
Murdaugh. That name means power.
The Murdaughs are the justice system.
Now I know that's not groundbreaking news, but I wanted to put it in there for maybe people who are just joining the case, that type of thing, because one thing that this documentary really reiterated to me is the depths of power in this small town. And just that it was a really small town, and this family really had this entire town in a chokehold for generations.
Paul was like the puppet master. People listened to him because of who his dad was. People were afraid of him because who his dad was.
Another thing the documentary did for me, at least, was it really brought home the level of entitlement as well as the privilege that the Murdaugh children, and all of the Murdaughs really, because they were kids at one time, right? But that they had, and especially Paul. And what it does is it shines light, especially on the Mallory Beach case and how that went down. And it really shows how all that played out in regards to his grandfather helping him, trying to blame it on his friend who was driving the boat, so on and so forth.
Wasn't anything too good that I've ever heard about him that people would say. They would say Paul was very arrogant, entitled, always got his way.
And what I find really sad, and a big takeaway from this, was just what this guy said. There wasn't a lot of people out there singing these massive praises of some of these people, some of the family members in this case, especially some of the ones that lost their lives, which I think is just so sad. Because one big takeaway for me as well was looking at this and seeing this family who had it all, and when I say that, you'll see what I'm saying in a minute, and had the potential to have it all, but they didn't really have it all in what matters the most. It was like they had all this power, they had all this money, they had all this privilege, but at the end of the day, look at how it crumbled to pieces. They didn't have what makes a home, a family, in my opinion at least.
And we grew up with Paul's family.
We did. One thing that we have tried to instill in our children is you're friends with the Murdaughs, but at the same time, you have to beware of them. Because if something goes down, you're going to be the one in trouble, not them.
Now, I thought this was a very interesting statement by her, and I think it's a very hard lesson that her children, her son, you know, this was one of the parents of the boat crash victims. And I think one thing that was also interesting as well is that you hear from these parents and whatnot, and it's just like, you know, they grew up with Alec, their parents grew up with the other. I mean, it just goes down and down and down through the generations, and they all have the same story of, you know, yeah, I mean, these family members got away with whatever they wanted to, and just like she said, if something went down, you're going to be the one that gets in trouble for it. So, you know, you have to keep your eye on them.
A lot of people in town would not let their kids hang out with Paul.
His mother, Maggie, she taught her children, do whatever you want to do, it's okay because of who you are.
And again, that's what I mean by my earlier statement of they seem to have all that seemingly might matter to some degree of power, money, and all this, but other things that might make a home, a family, love, that type thing, because at the end of the day, look at how quickly it became unraveled, and for the love of power and all that, you know, Alec took them out. And that's what I find so heartbreaking, is it's almost like generation after generation, they never stood a chance, right? Because that was number one. And so, you know, again, this is hearsay. This is what other people are saying. I don't have any reason to not believe them. You know, and again, this is he said, she said type of thing. But to hear that, you know, well, they were raised in this context of, you can do whatever you want, that's your last name. Well, the proof is in the pudding. Look at the behavior.
What's your last name, buddy? Murdaugh. M-U-R-D-A-U-G-H. Okay, what's your first name? Paul. Have you been checked out? My name, bro? Yeah, I'm fine. Hey, can I use your phone?
Paul's first thought was, let me call my grandfather, Randolph Murdaugh, the former solicitor who knows all the law enforcement there.
Now, the clip we just watched was in relation to the case of the Mallory Beach incident on the boat. Paul was driving. Allegedly, there was this whole talk of it was his friend or not. And of course, there's no one around anymore to dispute that and whatnot. But for all intents and reasons, it does appear that Paul was driving. Now, all that aside, this is just an example here of that privilege playing. And again, from eyewitnesses and whatnot saying, you know, his first concern was getting his grandfather on the phone to start covering up. Now, where this becomes important is when you look at the evidence that comes forth with the other family members and all these other crimes that the family commits or has committed along the way and their process of covering up. And again, I think this plays into why Paul was the one chosen in this instant to be taken out. I think this boat incident and him driving the boat, other incidences that he did, his general attitude and demeanor, and evidence of, well, I shouldn't say evidence, but circumstantial hearsay testimony from others of basically Buster was the favorite child. Buster was to follow in the footsteps of Alec. I think this all played into Paul being the chosen one to lose his life to further get Alec out of trouble. Let's look at a few clips in relation to Alex's father and the other Murdaugh men.
I tended to think of that part of South Carolina as his duchy. People there had to give tribute to Buster Murdaugh.
If Buster Murdaugh liked you, he tried to help you every way he could. If Buster didn't like you, he'd try to hurt you any way he could.
I knew Buster personally growing up, and the stories about Buster taking care of people, very real. And a lot of people to tell you, yeah, Buster would have somebody taken out in a minute.
The Murdaughs were like the mafia. You know, you just don't mess with them.
Wow, okay, real nice family there. Now, this is creepy in a way because you're hearing from other members of the community as well as parents of people from the boat accidents / members of the community / friends. I mean, literally, again, what this documentary drove home for me is how small this community was and how much power this family held and how unbridled that power went. And at one point, I don't know if I put this clip in here, but one of the gentlemen who speaks in here said something to the effect of, if your moral compass is broke, it's just broke, right? They ain't no fixing it. And that's what really stood out to me, because I'm just like, you know what? When someone has this level of power and it goes unchecked, and these are the things that come out of, oh yeah, they'll take you out, and oh, you know, took out their father or their son and wife, and so on and so forth. This is disgusting. Like, you don't fix those personality traits, is what I'm getting at.
He walks into a courtroom. He's going to point out, well, that's his dad's big strong of all. That's his grandpa. And he's going to make sure that you know who he is.
He's always been one to scheme and manipulate.
Now, if you watch the trial, you'll remember that the judge was like, we had to take the pictures of your grandfather down during sentencing and whatnot. So it's very interesting to see the full circle in this documentary, because this was filmed pretty early on. You can hear some of the parts. Most of that I cut out because it wasn't groundbreaking. It hadn't been done yet, except for a couple down the road that I was like, didn't age well. This is kind of one of them where it's like, I can see him going in the courtroom. Hey, boy, that's my granddaddy up there. Yeah, boy, we're about to get a conviction out of this one. You know, whole time robbing the people blind, doing whatever. And then you hear this dude over here who was some kind of friends with him growing up, right? Talking about, just, he was always scheming, always doing this. It's just like a new ick unlocked, and it's called the Alec Murdaugh ick. We're on to something here, Sofa Squad. Now let's look at a few clips in relation to how the family works the evening of the Mallory Beach incident, of the boat accident, and how that played out. Here we go.
We're both crying. We started getting phone calls from Alex. And in that hour, he called 3, 4, 5 times trying to convince us that Connor was driving the boat. Paul had called his grandfather, Randolph, from the ambulance, and Connor heard Paul tell Randolph that Cotton Top was driving the boat.
Now let me tell you what, I cannot imagine the feeling of being one of those kids in that situation. There's so many different feelings going on, right? Your friend's missing. Number one, you're all intoxicated. This has happened. You're angry at the fight, whatever went down. Your friend's gone. You're physically hurt. Then all this starts going down, and the guy who kind of has started all the trouble is now blaming you, trying to put it off on you. And his father's coming around. Your jaw's messed up. You can't speak. I mean, does it get any worse? Well, it does, because it gets worse for Mallory Beach, right? She lost her life. This is such a tragic incident. Death didn't need to happen at all. It breaks my heart for this young lady.
Very soon after their first meeting with Mr. Fleming, they discovered that he was Alec's son, Buster's godfather.
Corey Fleming's his son's godfather, is his college roommate. It is one of his best friends out there. So he was trying to direct them to use Corey Fleming because he knew it would benefit him.
Another tactic by Alec is, as we just saw in this clip, he is going to, come in, oh, we'll do your case for free, or, oh, you know what, go get old Corey. He's going to look out after you. And then the parents find out, well, wait a minute, this is basically like Alec representing us, right? But this is how this works. Complete side note, when you hear these people talking, like one thing that comes to mind is the music industry these days, and they're talking about how these contracts are done and whatnot, or not just the music industry, entertainment industry, and how, someone's representing an entertainer, but also they're friends with the lawyers and representing, whoever over here. That kind of a thing. Same type thing goes on here. When everybody is friends with everybody on both sides of the table, it usually is not going to benefit the people seeking out help. And that's one thing that this documentary also brought in, was how Alec would line up the chess pieces to always benefit himself. Once I learned this through the trial and through watching, and researching more after the trial and seeing how calculated he was with that, it made more sense to me how much he was trying to align the evening of Maggie and Paul's murder to look the way it did, to create confusion, that type of thing. This is just what he does, right? Now, if he was in the throes of some kind of addiction, this, that, and the other, this is where it could have gotten messy and there was things unaccounted for, like he wasn't, counting on Snapchat, right? Thank God for that. But again, this is another thing that's just brought home was, wow, this man was very calculated.
Connor, who was driving the boat at the time of the collision? I don't know.
Alec told him to say he didn't know who was driving the boat.
Again, furthering the point, you hear Alex's attorney here. Now of course they're going to say, well, he said that I don't know. Well, that's because Alex went in there and told him to say that. They were in there immediately creating the story.
That he never spent a moment, not in a jail cell even, but getting booked. They took his mugshot in the hallway of the courthouse.
That one stings. I can't imagine. I'm pretty much speechless over it. This young lady lost her life. All this goes down. He's not going to even spend 1 second. Now, here's my thing. Would I expect him to spend tons of time in jail? No, because his family has the means to bond him out, right? They could have set him a huge bail and they were going to get him out. The fact that he didn't even have to go get booked in, that they took his picture in the hallway. Are you serious? This is the level of privilege you're dealing with.
Things get dark and I see the light and I'm going to the light. Now, for a second, I thought to myself, am I dead?
I mean, I can't roll my damn eyes hard enough. Talking about some burning bush, 10 Commandment type situation here, right? He came back with a new list of them, probably all related to how he is God. Now, what this clip was about was him a phone call talking about the roadside incident where his life was almost taken. This is Alec. And, that one's a big whammy. But again, you just see where you have to question, if he's saying, hi, my name's Alec Murdaugh, you have to question if he's lying or not. Now, let's watch some clips about the young man, Stephen Smith, who lost his life. This is a gentleman who was found in the middle of the road. The case is being reopened, or it was reopened, I should say, but it looks like they're going to re-exhume the body to do some, I don't know what you call it, but like third-party investigations, because essentially what took place is his life was lost. It was classified as a hit and run, but literally everybody, except for people who could have their strings pulled by the Murdaughs, did not think this was a hit and run. So let's watch some clips about that now.
I said, are y'all okay? I heard that somebody had threw a body out on Sandy Run Road.
She was like, who do you think it is? I said, I don't know, but I was like, Mama, did you hear from Stephen any? I was like, Stephen never came home.
And that's when I knew.
My stomach drops when she said that. I can't imagine. Cannot imagine.
We didn't have a lot, growing up, but Stephen understood something that a lot of kids don't understand, and that this is not forever.
I really appreciate that they put this statement in the documentary. One thing that I found for myself, and maybe you can relate, is that when we're young, we're teenagers, we're kids, whatever, time kind of stands still, right? And so it's one of those things where it does feel like it's forever. And I know myself, I got lost in that, thinking that it was forever. So hearing this young lady say, you know what, Stephen was like, look, you know what, this isn't forever. We're going to go out, we're going to do our own thing, yada, yada, yada. I really admired this about this young man.
This is not a wreck. This is a murder. No one has ever, that I've worked with on the highway patrol, think this is a hit and run.
Now, this is the thing, and this is one of the people who responded to one of the patrol officers or whatever. Person after person will say this about this situation, and we'll get more into the evidence in some clips here in just a second. Watching this, and as I'm recording this, Buster has released a statement through a lawyer talking about, I don't have anything to do with this, so on and so forth. And so again, any things that come up in here, it's all alleged. This is not proven yet. But you'll hear in some of these clips where the Murdaugh name comes up over and over and over, and they were never questioned, which again, they don't have to be, right? Unless, I don't know how that works, but they don't have to come forth and talk about it. So that being said, this really opened my eyes even more in this documentary than it did in the Netflix one, of being like, oh yeah, this was not a hit and run. This was something really bad took place here, and it was covered up. In my opinion, allegedly, I wasn't there.
And then before the sheriff came in, Randy Murdaugh was calling. He was doing a workman's comp claim for Joel, and so he called Joel and offered to investigate. All you wanted was his electronics, his passwords, his Facebook, and you didn't ask any questions. I just need those electronics.
I've said this in numerous other videos. This is such a common theme, right? And this is one of the things that really stood out to me, is the fact that they call up, hey, we'll help you out, we'll do this, but in this one specifically, we need to get his electronics. That is a huge red flag to me, because remember, all the rumors going around about this is that Buster and him were doing something on the side. We don't know what. It is alleged. We have no proof of this at the time of this. Buster says this is not true. So there's that. And until any other kind of hard evidence comes forth, there is no proof of this, right? But hearsay and all that type thing and rumor mill is, going wild and rampant on this. So that's what's going on. The fact that Randy would call and want to get into the electronic stuff is very interesting to me. Now, also, you could, if you would play devil's advocate on this, you could look at it like, well, maybe he wanted to see who he was trying to reach out to in those last minutes. But again, why would he do that? I don't know. It's very odd.
Things that were not there should have been there. For example, there's no glass. With that type of force, there would be glass on the ground or possibly in the body. There's no tire marks. There was no paint from the vehicle, no oil transfer. The phone didn't even fall out of his pocket. The phone didn't shatter. The way the body's laying in the roadway, there's no tumble to the body. The blood itself, it's just a pool of blood. When you have a body that is hit by a car traveling at 55 miles an hour, they're going to tumble down the road. So why are there spots in different areas of the roadway?
Now, even though it is sad and kind of to, consider and learn about, I guess, all the evidence that has come forth about, what usually happens in these instances. So, for example, with Stephen, his shoes were still on, his phone was still in his pocket, there was no real blood splatter, just blood pooling, he didn't tumble down the road, no car debris, the list goes on and on, right? Literally, the only reason they classified it as hit and run is because he was in the middle of the road. That does not sit right with me at all.
When they said that he ran out of gas, I'm like, he had a phone. He could have called me.
Now, I think that part is really odd as well. Now, here's a couple of things that I'll say on this. Because again, this is all rumor mill, this kind of a thing, but from the other documentary, someone had made mention that he was comfortable enough with Buster to call him and say, hey, I'm on this road, could you come get me? And they happened to be out and about, so they came. Now, if the rumor mill was true, which we don't know if it is, that there was something going on there with them, he might have elected to not call his sister because he wanted to call Buster. Pretend it wasn't Buster. Pretend it was someone of interest or whatever. We don't know, right? It could have been for that reason. So, my point being with all that is, I don't think that he thought he was in danger, is my first and foremost thing. I don't think he thought he was in danger because I feel like if it was like, oh my gosh, this is, he would have probably called his sister right away. So it could have been a scenario of, oh, well, let me reach out to so-and-so. And if there was something going on, like, I'm putting myself in his shoes. And if it's one of these things where I'm like, okay, I just maybe left so-and-so's house that I'm kind of seeing, I could call them up and get them to come pick me up. So I'm going to do that before I call my sister. You see what I'm saying? That type thing. Now, if it was like, I'm closer to home, something's gone down, let me call home first. Okay, I get that too. So I'm not trying to discount what she's saying because obviously she knows her brother much more, but I'm just trying to also look at other avenues that could explain it. And it just really feels like to me, there's a reason why he didn't call her. And I feel like it's because at first he didn't feel like he was in danger. And he was either going to walk wherever he was going, and just do that for whatever reason. But I think more than that is there probably was a level of, I'm going to call so-and-so for whatever reason over my sister to come grab me. And that's just kind of how I felt like that maybe went down. And unfortunately, maybe that person turned out to be sinister.
He's called me plenty of times.
The car was out of gas, but somebody went out there and drained the gas to make it look like it was out of gas? Or was it really legit out of gas?
That's a damn good question. This is how you can go down these rabbit holes. Was it legitimately out of gas? Did he, somebody drain the tank? That kind of a thing. My mind just goes wild with possibilities.
And the fact that he left his wallet in the car.
That part's really weird to me. Again, you leave your wallet in the car. You don't call home. Now, again, I'm trying to think back to high school and all that type stuff and being like, maybe that wasn't being a kid and being kind of forgetful or whatever. And again, I don't know Steven. So he could have been the type that's like, no, I've always got my wallet on me. I always got this, and it would have been out of place for him, right? One would think if you were out of gas, you would take that. But maybe also it's like, well, I don't want to take my wallet because I'm going to be walking down the road. And then that would make me feel more vulnerable. So I'll leave it in the car. I mean, I'm just going over all possibilities, trying to come up with, why that would happen.
When their names started coming up, I knew immediately, okay, we need to talk with others about this.
Now, what that clip is referring to is when the Murdaugh name started coming up, when they start getting all this feedback from numerous people of what happened to Stephen, and the Murdaugh name is like all over it.
Our investigators went around and talked to these people, and they said, yes, we heard these things. Well, a lot of these people disappeared after that. There was talk. Some of these people were paid to leave town, paid vacation, that they were incentivized to not be available.
Now, this is the part that flies all over me, but also the part that, and I don't want to say it shocks me. Well, I shouldn't say that. It shocks me because I still have hope that this doesn't happen, right? But obviously it does all the time, unfortunately. But the fact that some people would come forth and all of a sudden it's, oh, well, we can't, they've gone on vacation. Oh, no, their phone's turned off. Oh, this is happening. It's disgusting.
These 2, maybe 3 young men were in a vehicle. They were riding down 601, saw the car on the side of the road. I guess saw the boy walking. They turned back around. I guess they were attempting to, I don't want to say, mess around with him or something like that, and stuck something out the window, and it, hit him in, I don't know if it hit him in the head or the back or where it hit him. And then that's pretty much all I heard. I did hear names, and
This is the story that's been circulated, that's kind of gone all over the place in regards to the rumor mill. And now again, I ain't no crime scene person, but that right there is what sounds like to me a logical thing of like, they're going by, they see him, hey, wait, isn't that Steven? And he's gonna be a target, right? And they come back and do this. Or the other theory of they pick him up and then rough him up and they dump the body. That kind of a thing. But again, I don't know how reconstruction of a crime scene works to say, well, this is what the body would do if you used like a baseball bat and drove by him and did this and that kind of a thing. So I don't know.
When we were younger, Stephen played baseball with Buster and a few classmates, and Buster's grandfather and dad were the coaches of the team.
I mean, like I said, they're everywhere in this town.
Paul was the outdoor guy. Buster liked the hunt, but he was a studious person, took his study seriously. And what I'm told by people who were close to him, that that Buster was the favorite child.
Now, to me, it sounds like Buster was the one that was going to carry on the legacy. It sounds like Paul was kind of the party dude, maybe not as serious as this. Now, mind you, Buster got expelled for cheating, right? So, I mean, that's so low on the totem pole for what they get away with, though, right? That probably was nothing to them. And he bought his way back in. So, the thing is, hearing these differences, I still just go back to, I feel like the boating incidents was the kickoff that brought their world crashing down. And this was one of the reasons why when push came to shove, Alec was like, Paul's got to go. Buster is going to be willing to carry on the family name. I personally think even in Alex's mind, it was just a narcissistic type thing, right? It probably had nothing to do with Buster and everything to do with Alec of someone will carry on the name. I'll actually sacrifice myself to keep my memory going and the protege that even looks like me.
When I originally heard this, I was thinking of the younger Murdaugh boy, Buster's little brother Paul, because Paul's more the, I don't say troublemaker, but he's a little more, my last name is Murdaugh, I can do whatever, you know what I mean?
And this seems to be a common theme with feedback and what people around the town seem to say in these interviews and whatnot is Paul was out there. Paul was, I'm a Murdaugh, I'm going to do what I want to do. He was more like on Front Street with it, whereas the other family members seem to move in a more quieter way, but the same outcome.
He said that he was going deep sea fishing, I think the 3rd week in July, with a prominent person. That's all he said. He wasn't giving a name.
Now, this is Stephen's mother talking about what Stephen was telling her in regards to going deep sea fishing with some prominent person. And this is in relation to the rumors that Stephen had something going on with someone of major prominence in the town that the town would be kind of shook over.
The day he died, he told me, them Murdaughs killed my son. He would tell anybody, or you could ask Joe, what happened to your son? the Murdaughs killed my son because he was gay. How do you know? I know my son. I know he was seeing Buster. How can you prove it? I can't. But I just know the Murdaugh boys killed my boy.
My God. And the father died of a heart attack not too long after that. Broken heart, if you ask me and others, apparently, from what they have to say in the documentary. You know, I mean, what do you say to that, right? It's absolutely heartbreaking, and it does sound like, and again, like you said, you know, we don't know, we can't, I know my son, or the friends, like, we don't have proof of this, right? It's just what we were told, or what we heard, or what Steven said, or this, whatever. But when you start clumping it all together, it just, something doesn't seem right, and I find myself saying that over and over with this case.
Have you ever heard that Stephen had any kind of a sexual relationship with Buster Murdaugh?
There was rumors of that. I don't know if it was true. If Buster was gay, he would have never came out about it.
And that's the other thing too. I mean, please, do you think Buster would, you know, be marching in the Pride Parade in Hampton County if they even have one? I don't think so. Okay, you know, that was never going to happen, right? And again, just from the sounds of it, if that were to ever take place, if it were proven that, yes, Buster and Steven had something going on, okay, great, fine, dandy, whatever, you know, then you have to also prove, okay, well, did it lead to Steven's death, right? There's all these things there, right? So, the family that Buster was from, that would never have gone over. I mean, look at the things they were willing to cover up and do over simple stuff. So their son, the protege of Alex, coming out is gay? No. It's not going to be a thing, right? But again, all this is hearsay, and just like the young lady said, you know, yeah, there are rumors of it, but I don't know. So I really hope that with the investigation being reopened, with the mother, the parents, or the mother exhuming the body, having a third party look at the situation, I hope that the answers come to the surface.
I think they loved each other. I don't know that they were in love with each other, but they were both very much in love with how they were viewed in society.
Those clips were from one of the parents of the boat crash victims talking about Alec and Maggie. Now, this kind of sums up what my personal thoughts are on their relationship. And again, this is for me sitting on the sidelines on the sofa. I don't know any of these people, so it's just sad. It's just my opinions. But that's what I meant when I said earlier of they had all this stuff like power and this and that, but not what to a lot of people makes a love or home. It seems like they were in love with maybe their positions, what they did with one another, because in my viewpoint, and they probably did fall in love at one point, but if you're willing to do what you did to your wife and son over money and things of this nature, that's all sorts of wrong. Now, this is not to say that maybe Maggie didn't have true love toward Alec. We don't know. Unfortunately, she ain't here to say. You know, he took that chance away from her. Also took that chance away from Paul, right? So, you know, who's to say? But definitely from Alex's point of view, I mean, it's just, again, I go back to the proof is in the pudding, meaning look at the actions. Well, the actions show me, okay, money and all this stuff outweighed any kind of love, or we'll get through this, because you just used your son and wife to try and orchestrate this absolute atrocity. The next clips are in relation to the housekeeper, and this specifically is on the story of the dogs knocking her off the porch, that kind of thing. So let's just hear what people are saying about that.
He told them that if they would go visit his friend Corey Fleming, Corey would get the Satterfield boys some money. And the boys got none of it, not a penny.
Again, Corey Fleming's name comes up. So this is just what Alec did. As soon as this happened, whatever took place, if the truth ever comes out, if it was the dogs, if it was Paul, if it was Maggie, who knows, right? Because there's so many lies that came up with it. Immediately, Alec was like, my next insurance fraud victim, right? I mean, this was immediately what he was going to do. One thing that really surprised me, and I'm not sure if I have the clip in here because I have lots of clips in here, so I'll just talk about it briefly, is when they started showing pictures of the financial victims. And because there's a couple that have been like mostly popular in the press, Satterfields are one of them. What I found to be the most shocking of it was I was like, wow, these are all like predominantly minorities and predominantly like poor or people without means. And I was like, whoa, here is this man with plenty of money, plenty of power, plenty of ability to get whatever he wants, right? Completely victimizing these people. Because one thing this documentary did as well is it would like show their pictures like, here's so-and-so and this is what happened to them, and it would be horrible stuff, right? Like devastating car wreck, paraplegic, and then took all his money and then he died 2 weeks later. I mean, stuff that you're like, I wouldn't do it to my worst enemy, right? But Alec Murdaugh had no issue doing this at all.
The money went through Corey Fleming's firm, and Corey Fleming's record showed that the money went from there to Forge. Now, Forge Consulting is a legitimate settlement funding company. Corey Fleming wrote the checks to Forge, not Forge Consulting, just the word Forge, and delivered them to Alec Murdaugh.
So he went and created an account at Bank of America, or Alexander Murdaugh, doing business as Forge.
You see what I'm saying? This is a calculated, evil man. And the other thing is interesting, I think Alec was on the stand during his trial trying to like, I don't know why they're saying this about so-and-so and so-and-so. A lot of these people that are hearing these names, Corey, all these other people have been hit with charges, right? Because it ain't looking good. And we're just going to have to see what comes down the pipeline with all of these other attorneys and whatnot, whether it be attorneys or bankers. Alex's reach went far and wide, and he's basically trying to say, or at least part of it was that he's in a sense trying to take the blame for himself, right? Like, they didn't know that I was doing this. And if it turns out that it can be proven that Alec is actually telling the truth and that he blindsided these people and they had no idea that he was looping them into his crimes and now they're going to do the time, I mean, grimy. But if we find out they were in on it with him, I mean, even grimier, right? Look at how much abuse of power has gone on in this town. Now let's watch a couple more clips about the dog and the stairs and the incident and all that.
Now, a lot of people weren't really buying the whole dogs knocked her down the stairs.
I don't know, but I don't think she tripped over the dogs. Because when you listen to the 911 tape, she never mentions the dogs.
911, where's your emergency? My housekeeper has fallen and her head is bleeding. I cannot get her up. Okay. Where'd she fall from? She's still going up the steps, up the brick steps.
I just think if I was on the phone calling 911 and saying, oh my God, my housekeeper just tripped over my dog and she fell, but the dogs don't come up ever.
No, I thought this was interesting because the 911 call, the entire call, where Paul gets on it and Paul's very kind of dismissive with the woman, the 911 person. He's like, quit asking me all these questions. And she's like, well, the help's on the way. And for Maggie, again, I never, with 911 calls, I don't know what I would sound like on a 911 call. I don't hold a lot of water in those, I'm just like, I don't know. However, with this one specifically, and this lady here mentions, she doesn't mention the dogs. I do find that odd because I'm trying to put myself in the situation when they're like, what happened? And I feel like I would probably, say that like too, like they're on the floor, they were coming out, the dogs tripped and they fell backwards. That kind of thing is never really mentioned at all. But then I'm also like, well, if you're trying to create a story wouldn't you be sure to say that then? And if you weren't trying to create a story, you wouldn't say it? I mean, I don't know.
Gloria Satterfield, they pushed her down the stairs. That was no accident. That was on purpose. I think she found something. I've heard that she found his stash of drugs. She was going to tell his daddy.
So this is one perspective here. Now, also in the other documentary from Netflix, the gentleman, Mr. Cook, who is Paul's friend, Mallory Beach's boyfriend, who has all the reasons to not like Paul. I don't believe they speak anymore. But he kind of plays, rides the fence with Paul of they don't speak anymore, it sounds like. But he also says A, B, and C about him. And he's like, Paul would not have done anything to Gloria Satterfield. Basically, like, that was like his mother, right? Treated him better than his family ever did type thing. And so, but what if it was Timmy and not Paul? You never know. Now, I'm not trying to sit here and blame Paul and say he did this or that. I mean, again, we don't know. Now, let's watch a couple of clips about the people who are in the documentary and what they think in regards to when the crime went down. And what I'm speaking of is when Maggie and Paul's life were taken and their initial thoughts.
Alec done killed him. That was my first thought. Ain't nobody else in Hampton got the balls to try to kill a Murdaugh, in my opinion.
I never will believe that he did it. There's no way in the world.
So you see, it's kind of like the family friend, the residents of the town. We get these differing opinions and whatnot. And I have no doubt that there's people out there that would look at Alec, whoever, good person, this, that, and the other. I mean, we heard from even their own staff members. These were good people. This is a good man. People can be multiple things at one time, right? And that's one thing I've learned from true crime, is the people who perpetuate these crimes can be this amazing person to one person or group or whatever, and they can be taking lives over here at the same time. And it's just unfortunate, but it's just how humans are for whatever reason. Not everybody, obviously, thank God, but it is what it is, right? And this one thing I found is in this, it seems to be, whether it's the haves and have-nots, or you're in their circle or not, if you were in their good old boy system, well, you're going to be in the system, right? So they're going to have your back. Now, and as Alec learned, when you turn your back on the good old boy system and you screw the good old boy system over, you got to go.
Unless there's something we don't know about, that case will be as defensible, if not more defensible, than Paul's boating case.
Ooh, my goodness gracious. That one had to sting. I mean, talk about hindsight 2020, bless his heart. Now, that was Alex's defense attorney. Clearly, this was filmed way before the verdict. And, there were a few surprises up his sleeve. That part, I was like, oh my God, if you only knew, right? That was me at the kennel. Had no idea about that kennel video. It makes me wonder if he even knew about the kennel video at that point. So, again, big takeaways from this documentary were how vast and far the tentacles spread throughout this town, the bizarreness around the Stephen Smith thing with them trying to get into his electronics, see what's going on, control that narrative, the same way with the Mallory Beach thing, the whole 9 yards, in the same way that Alec did from the very beginning with the crime he perpetuated against his own family, which is why I think it's imperative that they do reinvestigate Stephen Smith's untimely and very questionable murder, we'll call it, in my opinion, by who I do not know. And so if you have not watched this, I definitely suggest watching the whole thing, all 3 episodes. These again are just some of the highlights to me, but there's much more in this documentary that I definitely suggest watching, as well as the Netflix one, right? If you're interested in this case and you want to get a little bit more in-depth into the family, into how the town works, I guess for me, it's hard to wrap my mind around the level of power and influence they had in this small town and just how small the town was, right? I always thought I came from a small town, and I do come from a small town, but it's also right outside of Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, these big areas. And so it makes it not that small. So I guess what I'm saying is, to sit here and think that these people, this family, could get away with this level of corruption along with, allegedly, other lawyers, other bankers, people like this. It's mind-boggling to me. So anyways, let me know, what are your thoughts? What did you find interesting? What do you think about the Stephen Smith case? And that's it. If you're still watching, drop hearts, drop love, drop sofas in the comments for all the victims. And thank you for being here. And until we pull out the ring light and the camera and the computer and the phone and Roscoe, I'll see y'all soon.